So let's start with the prayers. Om Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Parampara. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karvavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. The Shanti Patha. Om Bhadram Karunebhi Shrunuyama Devaah Bhadram Pashimakshabhiryajatraः Sthirairangai Stushtuvaguംसस्तुनूभिः व्यशेम देवहितञ्यदायुः स्वस्ति न इन्द्रो वृद्धश्रवाः स्वस्ति नः पूषा विश्ववेदाः स्वस्ति नस्तार्क्ष्यो अरिष्टनेमिः स्वस्ति नो बृहस्पतिर्दधातु ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्ति. Okay, so now we will chant the chapter itself, the second section, the first section, second chapter. Tadetat satyam yatha sudiptat pavakad
तदेतत् सत्यं यथा सुदीप्तात् पावकात्
Visfulinga sahasrashah prabhavante sarvaah
विस्फुलिङ्गा सहस्रशः प्रभवन्ते स्वाहा
तथा अक्षराद् विविधा सौम्य भावाः
तथा अक्षरात् विविधा सौम्यभावाः
प्रजायन्ते तत्र चैवाप्यन्ति
प्रजायन्ते तत्र चैवाप्यन्ति
दिव्यो ह्यमूर्तः पुरुषः
दिव्योऽयमूर्तः पुरुषः
सबाह्यभ्यन्तरो ह्यजः
सबाह्याभ्यन्तरो यजः
अप्राणो ह्यमनः
अप्राणो ह्यमनः
शुभ्रो यक्षरात् परतः परः
शुभ्रो यक्षरात् परतः
एतस्मा जायते प्राणः
एतस्मात् जायते प्राणः
मनः सर्वेन्द्रियाणि च
मनः सर्वेन्द्रियाणि च
खं वायुर्ज्योतिरापः
खं वायुर्ज्योतिरापः
पृथिवी विश्वस्य धारिणी
पृथिवी विश्वस्य धारिणी
अग्निर्मूर्धा चक्षुषी चन्द्रसूर्योः
अग्निर्मूर्धा चक्षुषी चन्द्रसूर्योः
दिशश्रोत्रे वाग्विवृताश्च वेदाः
दिशश्रोत्रे वाग्विवृताश्च वेदाः
वायुः प्राणो हृदयं विश्वमस्य
वायुः प्राणो हृदयं विश्वमस्य
पद्भ्यां पृथिवी हेष सर्वभूतान्तरात्मा
पद्भ्यां पृथिवी हेष सर्वभूतान्तरात्मा
तस्मादग्निः समिद्धो यस्य सूर्यः
तस्मादग्निः समिद्धो यस्य सूर्यः
सोमात् पर्जन्य ओषधयः पृथिव्याम्
सोमात् पर्जन्य ओषधयः पृथिव्याम्
पुमान् रेतः सिञ्चति योषितायाम्
पुमान् रेतः सिञ्चति योषितायाम्
बह्वीः प्रजाः पुरुषात् सम्प्रसूताः
बहवी
प्रजा
पुरुषात् सम्प्रसूताः
तस्मादृच्छसां युजुंषि दीक्षाः
तस्माद्रजसां यदुंषि दीक्षाः
तस्मादृच्छसां युजुंषि दीक्षाः
तस्माद्रजसां यजुंषि दीक्षाः
यज्ञाश्च सर्वे क्रतवो दक्षिणाश्च
यज्ञाश्च सर्वे क्रतवो दक्षिणाश्च
संवत्सरश्च यजमानश्च लोकाः
संवत्सरश्च यजमानश्च लोकाः
सोमो यत्र पवते यत्र सूर्यः
सोमो यत्र पवते यत्र सूर्यः
तस्माच्च देवा बहुधा सम्प्रसूताः
तस्माच्च देवा बहुधा सम्प्रसूताः
साध्या मनुष्या पशवो वयांसि
साध्या मनुष्या पशवो वयांसि
प्राणापानो व्रीह्यवौ तपश्च
प्राणापानो विहियवौ तपश्च
श्रद्धा सत्यं ब्रह्मचर्यं विधिश्च
श्रद्धा सत्यं ब्रह्मचर्यं विधिश्च
सप्त प्राणाः प्रभवन्ति तस्मात्
सप्त प्राणाः प्रभवन्ति तस्मात्
सप्ताशिषः समिद्ध सप्त होमाः
सप्तार्चिषः समिद्धः सप्त होमाः
सप्त इमे लोका येषु चरन्ति
सप्त इमे लोका येषु चरन्ति
प्राणा गुहाशया निहिताः सप्त सप्त
प्राणा गुहाशया निहिताः सप्त सप्त
अतः समुद्रा गिरयश्च सर्वे
अतः समुद्रा गिरयश्च सर्वे
अस्मात् स्यन्दन्ते सिन्धवः सर्वरूपाः
अस्मात् स्यन्दन्ते सिन्धवः सर्वरूपाः
अतश्च सर्वा ओषधयो रसश्च
अतश्च सर्वा ओषधयो रसश्च
येनैष भूतैस्तिष्ठते अन्तरात्मा
येनैष भूतैस्तिष्ठते यन्तरात्मा
पुरुष एवेदं विश्वं कर्म
पुरुष एवेदं विश्वं कर्म
तपो ब्रह्म परामृतम्
तपो ब्रह्म परामृतम्
एतद्यो वेद निहितं गुहायाम्
एतद्यो वेद निहितं गुहायाम्
सो विद्या ग्रन्थिं विकीरतीह सौम्य
सो विद्या ग्रन्थिं विकीरतीह सौम्य
इति द्वितीये मुण्डके प्रथमखण्डः
इति द्वितीये मुण्डके प्रथमखण्डः
Okay, so we are at mantra number 7. I'm just muting you all. And the mantra number 6 we had completed last time, but we talked about various karma kanda rituals, and we said that basically you can earn karma only in Manushya Loka. In other lokas, you can only exhaust karma. So again, this mantra talks about the creation. So tasmat deva bahuda samprasutaha sadhya manushyaha pashavo vayamsi prana panau vrihi yavo tapascha shraddha satyam brahmacharyam vidischa. So tasmat is from him. From whom? From that Purusha, from that Brahman. Deva Bahudaha, many types of gods. So, Deva Bahudaha, some Prasutaha are born, and that Bahuda is explained as Sadhya. Sadhya is celestials, And then Manushyaha, humans. Pashavaha. So Pashu generally is taken to mean cow, but Pashu is a generic term for animal, four-legged beings. So Pashava, animals, which include cattle, of course. Vayamsi, birds. Prana apanaha, the incoming and the outgoing breath. Vrihi yavau, grains. Tapaha, austerity. Shraddha, faith. Satyam, brahmacharyam. And vidishcha, other values, other types of values. Vidhi, the rules are there, the values are there to be followed. All these are born from that very same Brahman. So that word Tasmat is very important. That same Brahman, not Nirguna Brahman, but Saguna Brahman, Brahman with Maya Shakti. And that Brahman, from him is born this entire world. And how did the world come? Sankalpa Matrena, in the form of a thought of that Ishvara. Like we create the dream world with our thoughts. The comparison here is that Maya Sahita Brahman, that Ishvara, this entire universe of us, the entire Jagat of us, is in the form of a thought, in the mind of that Brahman. And that mind is what? That mind is Maya. So from that Brahman, Tasmat, Bahuda Devaha Samprasutaha. Many devas were born, all kinds of forms. Indra Devata, Agni Devata, Varuna Devata, Ganesha. Anyway, all the devas you can name, they were born. What is a deva? Deva is that divine entity to whom you make offerings in your yajnas, in your homas, in your rituals. And why do you make the offerings? So that we get various types of karma phalam. And we saw in Tattva Bodha that each type of devata has a different type of power. So when you want a particular type of karma phalam, you pray to a particular type of devata, you make offerings to him. But what is to be understood, all these tasmat come from that Brahman alone. So remember, devas are also a form of jivas. Right? Deva is a superior birth of a jiva due to an extraordinarily high amount of punya. But which means that just like in the human's case, just like in the ordinary jiva's case, we have an exhaustion of that punyam and that birth is over. Same rule applies to a deva also. Due to the high amount of punyam, they might have a longer life and a better quality of enjoyment, but that punyam also gets over. So devas are like jivas, superior jivas, but subject to the same limitations. Then he uses the word sadhya. So sadhya here is another group of celestials. Okay, devas are one group of celestials, and sadhya is another group of celestials, which is slightly, lower in hierarchy than the devas. And some people say that this can be in the form of pitras. So sadhyas are also in the form of your forefathers. So pitraloka is where sadhyas are found. That is one interpretation. Then manushyaha. So manushyaha is the human beings in general. Now what about devas? They had a high percentage of punyam. Sadhyas have a slightly lower percentage. Then come manushyas, we have a slightly lower than that. More of an equal mixture of punyam and papam. And then we have pashavaha, animals in general. They have even lower levels of punyam and higher levels of papam. So up to manushya, the punyam is more and papam is less. In manushya, they are roughly the same. Then as you come to the lower births, you find that papam is more and punyam is less. So pashavaha, animals in general. And Shankara here writes very meticulous note saying that these are not just animals which are tame, which you have in your houses or in your farms. They should also include wild animals. So he classifies them. Pashavaha means all types of animals, tame animals, as well as animals found in the forest. So as I was saying, we have to follow the main mantra very closely. So we have finished the first line. The second line we have finished Sadhya, Manushyaha, Pashavaha. And the fourth, in the second line, the fourth word is Vayamsi. Okay, so Vayaha. Vayaha has two meanings. In many South Indian languages, Vaisa, it is your age also. But here the meaning is not that, the meaning is birds. So Vayamsi means entities which can fly. So Pakshis, birds. Okay, so you have divided the whole living beings into three broad categories. One is the Uttama Prani, that is the best type of pranis, which are Devas and Sadhyas. Then you have the medium type of pranis, which are humans. And then you have the Adhama pranis, the lower type of pranis, which are Pashuhu and Vayamsi. This is the creation. Then, what is created after that? Prana Apana. The third line, first word, Prana Apana. The breathing process. And the infrastructure required to breathe, that is created. So prana here means exhalation, different from the understanding in yoga. Okay, in yoga, we take prana as inhalation and apana as exhalation. The definition in the scripture is urdhvam gacchati pranaha. That which goes upwards is prana. Adho gacchati apanaha. So if you look at the definitions, urdhvam gacchati is what? That prana which comes out is exhalation. And that prana, adho gacchati, that prana which goes down, that is inhalation. So the meaning becomes exactly the opposite of Yoga Shastra. And there is why it's being pointed out here is that everything is dependent upon each other because it is coming from that same Ishvara. So the exhalation, the carbon dioxide which we exhale becomes the inhalation for the plant. And the carbon dioxide inhaled by the plant is exhaled as oxygen, which becomes inhalation for us. It's a very symbiotic relationship. Then Vrihi Yavau. So that word is a compound word. It's broken into Vrihi plus Yavau. Vrihi means rice. Yavau is barley. So barley in Hindi is what? Johar. So rice and barley, food grains. So this is Upalakshanam for all types of food grains. Okay. Normally, when we think of food grains, we think of what? Our own stomach, our food, right? In fact, in the Brihadaranya Upanishad, there is a meditation on the hunger process, indicating that, when the stomach rumbles, you have to meditate upon the stomach. What does the rumbling indicate? It needs food. So normally when we talk about Vrihi and Yavau, rice and barley, we're talking about food. But Shankara has an interesting take up on it. It may be used for food for you, yes. But Shankara says the main purpose of Vrihi and Yavau, the purpose of grains. Can you guess what he says? He says there is a main purpose for all these grains. What is that? What could it possibly be? Any guesses?
For putting in the fire for yajna.
Excellent. So that main purpose of all grains is to be used as an offering to the Lords. The fact that it, is your food is different. And that is why we have Brahmarpa. That is also offering only to the gods. Then Tapascha. The Tapaha is austerity. So we have got 5 sense organs. And the Lord has provided food for all the sense organs, like color, form, sound, smell. All these are foods for the various types of sense organs. And because of the varieties of these kind of Vishaya, the sense objects available, there is always the possibility for overindulgence, and therefore Tapaha, the capacity for self-restraint. Interestingly, if you look at what is being hinted at, is that the sense organs have come from Bhagavan. The sense objects have also come from Bhagavan. And the capacity for self-restraint has also come from Bhagavan. So from that same Saguna Brahman, you have got the five sense organs. You have got the five sense objects. You have also got the capacity for restraint, tapaha. And Shankara classifies tapas into two types. So one is main tapaha, and one is when tapa is a part of another ritual. And when I say ritual, I am talking about Vaidika karma, Vedic rituals. So he says there is something called karma anga tapas. The crucial word is anga over here. Okay, anga means a part. And so there are two types of tapas, Swatantra tapas and anga tapas. So first he talks about anga tapas, he calls it karma anga. So karma here refers to Vaidika karma. So karma anga means Vaidika karma anga, that which is part of some other Vaidika ritual. Like for example, when you go to Shabrimala, what do? You stop shaving for 40 days, right? That shaving is a tapas, not shaving is a tapas. But it is not the main tapas, because the main tapas is the going to Shabrimala. So part of that main ritual is the stopping of the shaving. So that is the karma anga tapas. Similarly, you have on Ekadashi day, you have fasting. Unfortunately, in today's world, many of the people I know, and when I was in office also, when I used to work, there are a lot of people who used to do that fasting on Ekadashi day. But for them, fasting was the main tapas. It is not, because on Ekadashi day, the fasting is supposed to be karmanga. What is the main tapas? That Ekadashi day is for the purpose of spending the day in prayer to the Lord, in worship to the Lord. So that is the main Vaidika ritual. And but this fasting was supposed to be karma anga part of it. Because you are praying and because you don't want to be disturbed, you are supposed to spend the whole day in prayer. And so you fast so that you don't waste time on that part of it also. That's karma anga tapa. Okay. So this karma anga tapa, will it produce any karma phalam? Good question. This karma anga tapa, for example, let us take Ekadashi fasting. Ekadashi fasting, as I said, is not, fasting is not the main tapas. Main tapas is your whole day's prayer. Fasting is karma anga. Will it provide any?
Could it be that when we waste some time in eating, so the karma, the punya phala is less?
No. Let us take a specific example of Ekadashi prayer.
Yeah.
So that prayer, of course, will provide you punyam, right? But the point is, will this, because the prayer is the main ritual, the main Vajika karma. But the fasting, it's a anga of that. And fasting, because it's an anga, the anga cannot produce any karma phalam by itself, because it is part of another ritual. What is the purpose of this karma anga tapa? It's tapa. It is, Shankara says, samskara lakshanam. It just purifies your mind. It purifies the sadhaka so that the entire main ritual is carried out without any obstacle. So this we must remember. Yeah.
So purification of mind is also karma phala, isn't it?
I don't
Chitta
think
shuddhi?
this is in the way of that kind of chitta shuddhi. He simply says that this is enabling factor for the main karma to take place, because it is specified as part of the Vaidika thing. So this is a part of the peculiarity of our karma kanda. All rituals, many rituals are swatantra rituals, are independent rituals, and they give you independent karma phalam. But there are many other rituals that don't. Okay. So if you are doing the Ekadashi Upavasa as the main ritual, then it will give you karma phala. But for example, if I do the other one, you are going to Shabrimala. Shabrimala, going and those climbing those steps and the whole thing, the 40 days of fasting, all that is part of the main ritual. So this fasting itself plus the shaving, not shaving, all that is the karmanga. While it enables you to do the main ritual, remember that by itself, without the main ritual, like if you do only the non-shaving, not accompanied by the other disciplines, and not finally fructifying in going to Sabrimala, that by itself will not give you any punyam at all. The punyam comes from the fact that it is all aimed at going to Sabrimala. Okay, so that's what I'm trying to say. That karmanga tapa is important, but the karmanga tapa, when it is a karmanga tapa, remember that it is part of a Vedic ritual. And if the Vedic ritual itself is not performed, then it doesn't give any benefit at all.
So one question, Uday
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
So once in a while I used to do Ekadasi fasting, but I
Yeah.
used to go to work and do all the stuff. So that means there is no phalam generated and I must focus on the study.
Not really. See, if you are taking the Ekadashi fasting as a main ritual, let us say, because
Yeah.
you are not able to do the other things. Whole day you can't spend in prayer. So then for you, Ekadashi fasting becomes a main ritual.
Yes.
So if you are taking it as that, then the sankalpa has to be accordingly. That this is my main ritual for I'll fast, but there is no other accompanying Vedic ritual. Then it becomes Swatantra. Swatantra tapas always gives Chitta Shuddhi or Punyam as the phala.
Okay. Thank you.
But if you are taking it as part of a main ritual, that main ritual has to be performed.
Understood. Thank you.
And the best example for that is not the Ekadashi fasting, it is the Sabrimala thing, because you cannot shave for 90 days, but it's not going to help unless you actually have gone Sabrimala. Okay. So this independent tapas, yes, please.
So this not eating or not shaving, are these considered as non-action or karma abhava? Because I still have this confusion from our previous discussions that okay, in the Laukika only, there are many times when we can say there is non-action, like okay, not shaving. Okay, the drishtaphalam of that is that the hair grows. We can see that visibly. Not eating, the drishtaphalam is I feel hunger. There is a visible phalam there.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, I would have come to this point later, but anyway, whenever we talk about karma abhava, karma abhava not producing a result. So, by not doing something, do I get punyam or papam or not? That is the question, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, this normally, this pratyavaya papam business is restricted to Vaidika rituals. Okay. I had this confusion once, so I spoke it over with SPG also. He also said that whenever you are talking about Vaidika rituals only, then only should you bring Pratyavaya Papam into it. Because let us take an example of, say, that you are walking on the road or you're driving down, right? And you see somebody get hit by a car. What are the choices available to you?
Stop and help them.
Stop and help them.
Just drive away without helping.
And
the third option, maybe make a call to the police or something and we continue driving.
Yeah. Okay. So now the thing is that making a call to the police is got a positive action, right? Taking that person, stopping, and then taking the person to hospital has got a positive action. That's also punya. But if you apply this business of karma abhava will not produce phalam to your driving away without bothering, then there is a violation of a duty actually. The violation of duty is, this is the Dharma Shastra part of it, that you shall help your fellow person. Not helping that, not doing that part, to say that it will produce no phalam is not very, logical, is it not? If I have it in my hand to help somebody, and by my not helping that person, if that act of not helping is going to damage the other person, then we are saying that my non-action has actually brought about a result. Do you understand?
Yes.
And therefore, in cases where Vaidika karma is not involved, where there's a clear duty cast upon you involved, the violation of that duty has to produce what is known as prativaya papa. But not doing a Vaidika karma by itself, that is the discussion where we had, but that not doing that Vaidika karma will lead to a result where it shows the accumulation of papam for you, not in the case of duty. You have to actually go through the Shankara Bhashya for this. Shankara is very clear about this, that as far as Vaidika karma is concerned, if you are not doing the karma, the prativaya papam is by way of the fact that your accumulation of papam is being revealed, and that accumulation has been now not deferred. Had you done the punyam, the expression of that accumulated papam would have been deferred, and so you would not have the effect. But by your not doing that nitya karma or Vaidika karma, what has happened is that there is no counteracting punyam to defer the action of your accumulated papam. And so the papam shows immediately. And that negative result which you get out of that papam is what you call as the results of prativaya papam.
So Pratyavaya Papam is essentially just the revealed Papam coming sooner.
Coming sooner because there's no counteracting punyam had generated.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
yeah.
No, Raviji, you finish.
But in case of karma of where it's a clear duty for you, not the Vaidika duty, but the Dharma Shastram duty, that you should help your people. And that will definitely produce negativity or papa. So prativaya papam has to be understood in two clear boxes. One is Vaidika karma only, Nitya Naimittika karma, and one is Dharma Shastra karma.
Okay, got it. Sometimes when there is no dharma as such, duty as such, which is clearly imposed, then also there is pratyavaya papam by non-action.
If you can very clearly identify that the negative effect for somebody else is a direct result of your non-action, yes. Prativaya papam for yourself is a different matter. For yourself is the part of that Vaidika karma. But the effect on somebody else of my non-action, because if you took that, then the whole basis for dharmic society is destroyed, right? You are saying I don't need to help anybody else at all. I look only at myself. So that is why it's a different interpretation there.
Yes, Raviji, the dharma part is clear. I'm asking, like, for example, this non-shaving example that you gave.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no clear dharma as such that we should shave or shouldn't shave exactly, right?
No,
so
the Sabrimala thing is very, very clear. You have to not shave.
in Sabrimala, but generally speaking, like there's no rule about cutting or not
No.
cutting hair.
No.
Yeah, so in that case, if one doesn't cut the hair, the visible effect is that it grows. But is there any punyam papam?
No.
Adrishtam?
No. There's no adrishtam there because there's no intention of harming anybody else, right?
Yeah.
So that's why punyam papam is always in relation to the harm or good that it causes.
Yeah.
We say it is the harming others, but ultimately we always say it is because of the pain that I will undergo. So in a certain, like all activities will not be talked about by Veda, right? It won't tell you not to drink cold milk, for example. You might like hot milk. Those sort of activities which have no impact on the world in general, those are taken as not covered by Veda, and they are Laukika activities. So Laukika activities, this doesn't apply to. The concept of Pratyabha Papam is not applicable to Laukika activities, only to activities mandated by the Shastra. Okay. Right. So we talked about two types of tapas, the Swatantra tapas, independent tapas, which gives you punyam by itself because it is mandated by the Shruti, and karma anga tapas, which is part of an independent tapas, which is necessary for the completion of the tapas, but it doesn't give you independent fruit. Okay. Then is the fourth line, Shraddha. So Shraddha is the faith in the scriptures, and it was defined in Tattva Bodha as faith in the words of the teacher and the scriptures. What does this do? It converts the Manushya, the human being, into a Vaidika Manushya, okay, into a Vedic person. It converts the human being into a Vedic human being, and therefore the equation is Manushya plus Shraddha will become Vaidika Manushya. And in the Vedas, this particular faith is personified as Shraddha Devi, right? And we have even prayers. We have Shraddha Suktam and all those things. And Shankara defines Shraddha very precisely. He says Astikya Buddhi. What is Astikya Buddhi? Astikya Buddhi is the conviction that Veda is an independently valid pramana. Astikyam, asti, from the word asti, is that there is. So it's a conviction of my mind that Veda is a valid pramana. That is called Astikya Buddhi. That is what is called Shraddha. That is what Tattva Bodha says, faith in the Shastras and the teacher, because the teacher is expounding the Shastras. And if you have this, you will have a very tranquil mind. So Shankara says this will be followed by Chitta Prasada. Your mind will be absolutely tranquil, because since you have the faith, when you do the Vaidika karma, you will have no doubts in your mind, no questions in your mind about whether that Vaidika karma gives me a result or not, right? And Shankara says here, he says very pointedly that Shraddha is a precondition for performing any Vaidika ritual meant for achieving Purushartha. Any karma performed without Shraddha is what? Tamasika karma. Do you remember the definition of Tamasika karma in the Bhagavad Gita? You have to connect. Who can quote? 17th chapter. Anybody? You have to be able to connect. 17th chapter, 13th verse, second line. Shraddha virahitam karma, Shraddha virahitam yajna, tamasam parichakshate. This is coming from there only. I mean, other way around. The Bhagavad Gita sloka there comes from here. Okay. Then the next one is Satyam. So Satyam is truth. And in this case, this is not Jnana Kanda Satyam. This is Karma Kanda Satyam. Why does he say Satyam here? Because knowledge of a ritual. Remember, the whole thing is talking about tapaha, right? The knowledge of the ritual is not going to give you any benefit. The implementation of the ritual alone will benefit. And therefore, here in the Karma Kanda, Satyam means implementation of the teaching. So when we come to some of the other Upanishads also, Shankara will very clearly point out that Satyam of the Karma Kanda is different from Satyam of the Jnana Kanda. Because Satyam of the Jnana Kanda is existence principle. Satyamata Karma Kanda means that the teaching which I get there has to be followed by karma. Karma Kanda teaching will not benefit unless implemented. And so there should be no split between my knowledge and my way of life. And therefore Shankara writes here, Satyam here just means Anrita Varjana, avoidance of untruth. Untruth in the manner of not implementing the teaching over here. And since he says untruth, he also defines truth. What is truth? Yatha bhutartha vachanam. Talking of something as it yatha bhutam, as it actually is. And of course, he adds a condition which you all know. When you speak, in fact, if you talk about the Yoga Sutras, and where they say Satyam is one of the conditions, one should understand that it doesn't mean always speak the truth. Okay, the normal interpretation is Satyam means always speak the truth. It doesn't mean that. What is the right way to interpret that statement?
Satyam Bruyat, Priyam Bruyat,
Satyam Bruyat, Priyam Bruyat, and
Apriya Satyam Na Bruyat.
Apriya Satyam Ma Bruyat. So whenever you speak the truth. And whenever you speak the pleasant truth. And never speak the truth which is unpleasant. So Shankara says here, apidakaram. Apidakaram, truth you should not speak. Don't speak the truth if it is going to hurt somebody. Then is the second last word, brahmacharya. So a systematic study of the scriptures, which is of course the main duty during brahmacharya ashrama and sannyasa ashrama. So a brahmachari, literally the word brahmachari means brahma achar, one who walks on the path of Brahman. It doesn't mean a person who is a bachelor. That's the interpretation given because during brahmacharya ashrama, you are not supposed to get married because you were still a kid, right? You got out of brahmacharya ashrama at 18 or 19 and no need to have got married during that time. So brahmachari literally means one who has dedicated his whole life to the study of the scriptures. And that's why even a sannyasi is known as a brahmachari. Okay, so sannyasi also dedicates his life for study. Brahmachari also dedicates his life for study. The only thing is that during the Gurukula Vasa, the basic study is the Veda Antabhaga. Like it is the study of the chanting and all that. Of course, they do teach you in the Gurukula the Jnanam portion also. But because your mind is not yet got sufficient Chitta Shuddhi, the Grahastha Ashrama is meant as a purifying ground. So you have the knowledge, but it has not started working because your mind is not yet got sufficient Chitta Shuddhi. So Grahastha Ashrama is meant for that. So Brahmacharya here means all the disciplines which are necessary for Atmajnana. Everything is included in that one word, Brahmacharya. So Sadhana Chatushtaya. And the last one is Vidhischa. Vidhi means all the scriptural mandates. And they will vary. The mandates are not the same for everybody. They will vary according to the student, according to the ashrama. All those things, they'll vary. How advanced a student you are. So for every type of student, for every type of ashrama, there are different rules. So rules for brahmachari ashrama is different. Like sexual discipline for a grahastha has a particular meaning, but for a sannyasi it is different. So the rules will vary depending upon your position. And even the word satyam will have a totally different meaning for a sannyasi. For a grahastha, it is more relaxed because the grahastha has a much more difficult time, right? He has to balance his parents, his spouse, and his children. There's a juggling job to be done. And therefore, his life is the toughest. So for him, a lot of relaxation is done. And after reading all this, what is the one word in this mantra you should go back to? After the whole mantra has been read, you should go back to one word. and connect everything there. What is that?
Is it Manushya? Manushya should do follow all that?
No.
Tasmat.
Sorry?
Tasmat.
Explain a bit more.
Everything has come from
Yeah.
him only.
So samprasuta, the word. Tasmat samprasuta. You have to connect to Tasmat samprasuta. All this has been born from whom? From Ishvara alone. So this whole set of mantras, we are talking about Anatma, right? And the question comes, why are we talking so much about Anatma? Because of what? This is supposed to be Upanishad, Jnana Kanda. And we seem to spend most of our time talking about creation, Karma Kanda, and the rituals. Why is that so?
So understand rituals and creation, and then understand the temporary state of that and negate it.
You remember we talked about the Sampradaya. It consists of two sets of activities. One is Adhyaropa, and the other is
Apavada.
Apavada. So Adhyaropa is superimposition, Apavada is negation. So this is what we are doing, right? By pointing out that all these things are born from Saguna Brahman, you are actually superimposing all names and forms upon Nirguna Brahman. So these mantras are all showing you the Adhyaropa part of it, Adhyasa part of it. That is why it is very important. Because without Adhyasa, there is nothing to negate. Adhyasa has to come first. Then only can you negate. Okay. Now we look at the 8th mantra, which is Sapta Pranaha Prabhavanti Tasmat, Saptarshisha Samiddha Sapta Homaha, Sapta Ime Loka Yeshu Charanti Pranaha, Guhashaya Nihitaha Sapta Sapta. Okay. So look at the words Sapta Pranaha, the 7 pranas. Prabhavanti Tasmat. Prabhavanti is born. So again we are coming back to superimposition. Tasmat Sapta Pranaha Prabhavanti. From that Brahman, from that Purusha, the 7 pranas are born. Then Sapta Archishaha. Sapta Archishaha is 7 flames. Then Samiddaha. Samiddaha is fuel. Okay. You came across this word in the Bhagavad Gita. Which chapter? Which verse? At least the chanting teacher should remember. Chanting teachers, Samidha came where? Okay, I'll leave it for homework. Okay. Once you figure it out, put it in the group. Then Sapta Homa is the 7 offerings. Then Sapta Ime Lokaha, these 7 worlds, the 7 lokas, Yeshu Charanti, in which the pranas move around. Charanti is move around. And Guhashaya, in this cave, Guha Ashaya, in that cave, Nihitaha are seated or resident, Sapta Sapta. 7 are resident. So here, the Shastra is presenting your entire life. In fact, our entire life and every experience that we have is being presented as a yajna, as a homa. And this life homa of yours, of ours, this life of ours and all its experiences are possible because of 5 factors. What are they? Indriyas. 5 indriyas, jnani indriyani. Then the 5-fold sensory faculties. So this is Indriya Shakti. So you have Indriyas, then Indriya Shakti, then you have Indriya Vishaya, the sense objects. So three of them are the Indriyas, the power behind the Indriyas, the Shakti, then the objects of the Indriyas, the Vishaya. And for the experience to occur with the help of these three, there must be a contact between the Vishaya and the Indriyas, between the Indriya and the objects, between the sense organs and the objects, there must be a contact. So Indriya Vishaya Samyoga, that's the fourth one, contact. And of course, there's the last one, the Indriya Golakam, the physical location of the sense organs. So this we saw in Tattvabodha. The sense organs belong to the Sukshma Shariram, but can function only if the physical sense organ, which belongs to the Sthula Shariram, is present. So Indriya Golakam it is called. So these are the 5 factors which are necessary for the yajna to be done. And in this mantra, the Acharya is saying that all these 5 components, they come from whom? From Purushaha. Tasmat. Tasmat Prabhavanti. Everything comes from him only. Now, so he says Sapta Pranaha Prabhavanti. So this is not Pancha, it is Saptaha. So it presents in a peculiar way. So prana here is taken as Indriyas. The word prana is not Pancha Prana, it is the Indriyas. And you might say, of course, but we have only 5 Indriyas, na? Pancha Indriyas only we've got. But here the peculiar, a peculiar interpretation is given. And Shankara makes it clear by using the, he says, Shirnaya. He says all these Sapta Pranaha are located in the head. Shankara, by way of explanation, gives that one word. It is Sapta, why? It is 7, why? Because it is located in the head. And therefore, now you can understand, right? The eyes are taken as 2, the ears are taken as 2, the nostrils are taken as 2. That is 6. And the 7th one is the tongue. So 7. Do you see any, what do you call, anything left out?
Touch.
Touch. And touch is clubbed with what now?
Skin of the face.
Touch is clubbed with, the tongue is clubbed with the skin. The skin, which is the touch organ, is clubbed with the tongue. Why? Because it can taste and touch. The tongue can also touch, remember. It's not just taste. And therefore, while taking 7, you have to here say that the skin is included in the tongue. So, Sapta Pranaha, the 7 Indriyas, they are all located in the head. And Saptarchishaha is these Indriyas are being compared to 7 beams of light. Archi is a light, a flame, Dyuti. So they are being compared to 7 beams of light. Why are they being compared? Because light illumines the object close to it. And these sense organs, they illumine the object relating to their own field, Svavishaya. Each object relating to its own field is illumined by that sensory Indriya. And that is why it is called Archihi over here. So it's an adjective. It is being compared, the Indriya is being compared to the flame. And so the 7 flames, they indicate the 7 sensory faculties, the Indriya Shakti. And flame is a good term to use because the whole thing is being presented as a ritual, as a homam. And he says Sapta Samidaha, the 7 fuels. What would be the 7 fuels to the 7 sensory organs? The 7 Indriyas, the fuel will be the 7 Vishayas. And normally there are only 5 Vishayas for the 5 sense organs. But in line with the classification of these 5 as 7, we have to take it as 7 Vishayas. So some organs for some Vishayas for the left eye, some Vishayas for the right eye, some Vishayas for the left ear, and so on. So 7 Vishayas. These objects are the fuel for the Sapta Pranaha. They are the offering to the fire of the 7 flames. And then Sapta Homaha. Second line, last 2 words. This Sapta Homaha is the thing I told you about earlier. The Vishaya Indriya Sambandha. The connection between the Indriyas and the Vishayas. When they connect with each other, then it becomes a Homa. So that act of seeing, when your eye contacts the glass in front of you, that itself is being talked about as a Homa over here. The sense objects are being offered as an offering, as an oblation to the sense organs. Okay. And whenever we offer any object to the organ, what do we say? Swaha. In the ritual, you say Swaha. I offer you this. So if you are listening to a song and what are you doing? The object which is the song, you're offering it as that object, that music, you're offering it as an oblation to your ears. Similarly, 7 homas to the 7 sense organs. And since we are always using these 7 sense organs, your whole life is a continuous homa. You are offering objects to your sense organs all the time. Then the third line is Sapta ime loka yeshu charanti. Okay. So here, lokaha has to be understood properly. What does he say? Ime, rearrange that sentence. So ime sapta prana, or rather sapta pranaha, ime lokaha charanti. These 7 sense organs, they move around in this world, in these worlds. And therefore, where do your sense organs move around? Where do the indriyas move around? They move around in their golakams. And therefore, the loka here is equal to golakam. And Shankara says that this loka is taken as golakam because it is the place of residence of the indriyas. And why is it taken like that? Because people reside in lokas and indriyas reside in golakams. So it is appropriate to call the golakams as the loka for the indriyas. So he says indriya sthanani. It should be taken as the place of residence of the indriyas. So that's how we know that the word loka here doesn't refer to 7 lokas. It refers to your 7 golakams, which is comparable, in which these 7 indriyas they are going to reside. Okay. So the right eyeball is the golakam for the right eye. The left eyeball is the golakam for the left eye, indriya, and so on. Okay. Now, every sensory experience we know, what does it bring us? It brings us either pleasure or pain, which comes through the exhaustion of the punyam and papam. And therefore, the function of the sense organs is for the purpose of exhausting our punyam and papam. And if something has to function, it has to have a location for functioning, which is different from the location where it rests. Now, the sensory locations have the golakams as their offices. Where do they rest? So Shankara says, they rest in the heart. All the indriyas, when they go to sleep, they rest in the heart. So the golakams are the offices where they function. But when the day's function is over and they are resting, they withdraw from the golakams and they go back into the heart, the hridayam, which is their house. And that is why when you sleep, though your golakam is open, your ear, for example, is open, your nose is open, but you still don't hear sounds or smell anything. Why? Because the indriya have gone away to their location, to their house, which is the hridayam. And therefore, it says all this prana, the 7 indriyas, the 7 sapta pranaha, they move around in the Golakams. That's why he says, Ime lokaha yeshu charanti. While functioning, they are resident in their Golakams. But when the function is over and they're resting, they withdraw into the heart, the Guhashaya. So he says, Guhashaya nihitaha sapta sapta. So these 7 indriyas, they resolve into the Guha, the cave. Which cave? The cave of the mind. And Shankara clarifies here that this cave means the physical heart. Okay. So this is another thing which is a lot of controversy. Some people say there is a spiritual heart on your right hand side and all that. Shankara here, if you look at this, he rests this controversy. He says no, the Guhashaya here is nothing but the physical heart. All the indriyas, they actually withdraw into the physical heart when they are not functioning in their Golakams. And here again the word, there is prana. So to avoid any mistake, prana, Shankara specifically states here, this prana is the indriyas and the normal meaning of pancha prana should not be taken. So Guha here means the heart. Shaya means resting. So Guha Shaya means resting in the heart during the time when they are not functioning. Sapta Sapta, all these 7 indriyas, they withdraw from their Golakams when they are not functioning and they come back into the heart. Okay. So we have talked about sense organs, we talked about the function of the sense organs, and we have talked about the karma phalam of the sense organs. So all these, they are classified into 2. What are they? All these activities, they can be classified into 2. Those performed for spiritual benefit and those performed for material benefit, right? So for spiritual benefit, Shankara uses a name. That person who is performing that activity for spiritual benefit, we call him Karma Yogi, right? Shankara uses the term Atma Yogi. Atma Yagi, not Atma Yogi. Atma Yagi. So I'm giving this because you might come across this word somewhere. So Atma Yagi is a word found in Manusmriti. And basically it is used in the same term as a Jnani. Why Jnani? Because he is doing a homam. He is offering the Jivatma into the Paramatma. And Shankara says, yes, there can be another meaning also. The person who performs Nitya Naimitika Karma for the purpose of Chitta Shuddhi. There also is a secondary meaning. The Karma Yogi performing activities for spiritual benefit is one of the types of karma. And the other types is Deva Yaji, he says. Deva Yaji means one who worships the Devas. And what does one worship the Deva for? He's talking about the karmis here. Why should we take that particular interpretation? Because he has already talked about the person doing the yajna for spiritual benefit. So what is left? Somebody who is doing it for material benefit. That's a Deva Yaji. And he says that the Karma Yogi is a wise person because he is working for Chitta Shuddhi. And all his actions and the results of those actions, the Karma Phalam also, will finally give him Chitta Shuddhi. And he says all these, the Karma Yogi, his intentions, his actions, his Chitta Shuddhi, his Karma Phalam, his coming to the Acharya, his studying Vedanta, all are born from Ishvara alone. That is a critical line here. Everything has to be finally connected to, in this particular mantra, Tasmat Prabhavanti, is born from Ishvara alone. Then he comes to the non-spiritual materialistic fellow. So he says the Deva Yaji, the Karmis, they are not aware of Atmajnana. And all their karmas are in the form of Kamya Karmani. And all the instruments with which they do their actions and the karma phalam also, they are also all to be connected to what? To tasmat prabhavanti. In short, everything has to be connected to all that has come from Ishvara alone. We must remember that Karanam and Karyam are identical. And everything that you see is coming from Ishvara alone. This is the crux, the gist of this topic. This must be in the background all the time. All these mantras are there to enable us to do only this. Okay. Any questions? Two main mantras you have completed. No questions at all?
Raviji,
Yes, Nataraji.
I have one.
Yeah.
Hello,
Yes, Nataraji.
can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I think it's breaking. It's breaking on my side.
Oh, no, you're very clear, Nataraji, no problem.
Am I? Okay.
Yeah.
So when you're emphasizing that everything is it's basically due to the action of Ishvara, can we interpret that as that this is basically the outcome of karma? The same interpretation, that this is basically just the outcome of karma.
That is one interpretation, which is not wrong. But here what is being said is that initially you will say everything is born from Ishvara. And later on he will say everything is Ishvara only. So that is the sense being conveyed. Initially we are trying to present Anatma, matter, but when finally we will say that there is no such thing as matter, because that matter is also basically Ishvara only. That will be the next part, the negation part. So first you present the universe, the Jagat, as something which is superimposed upon Brahman. Then you negate the superposition and say that whatever is presented is basically mithya. So what ultimately remains is only Brahman, which is Satyam.
So basically trying to take us towards the concept of the Ishvara, which is
Yes. He's taking us to that
factor of Brahman.
There's a fact that everything is Brahman alone. That is very taking us.
Rather than focusing on the outcomes, the karma and all the things, how it operates.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, now we'll go to the next verse. This, what is happening here actually is that slowly, the scripture, the Shastram is trying to take us away from Karma Kanda and into Jnana Kanda. Everything that is there will be there. Only our way of looking at it has to change. Then we look at the 9th verse, which says, Ataha samudra girayasya sarve asmat syandante sindava sarva rupaha athascha sarvaha oshadayo rasascha yenaisha bhutaish tishthate hi antaratma. So ataha, again ataha is to be taken as from him, or from that Purushaha, from that Brahman. Ataha samudraha girayascha sarve. Samudra, oceans. Giri is a mountain. Sarve is everything. So all the mountains and all the oceans are born from him only. And Syandante. Syandante is to flow. Sindavaha is a river. And Sarvarupa in all forms. So Asmat Syandante Sarvarupaha Sindavaha. From him alone, all the rivers of all the various types of rivers, they flow. Then Athascha Sarvaha Oshadayo Rasascha. From him again, Athascha Sarva Oshadayaha. All the plants and all the herbs. Rasascha. So Rasaha is the sap, the juice of these plants. They also come. and yena eshaha, by which bhutai tishtati. So bhuta is panchamahabhutani. Because of him alone, these 5 gross elements, they exist. And who is this he? Ataha, that he is Antar Atma. So Antar Atma is the essence of everything. And Shankara clarifies later that when you say essence of everything, he's talking about the subtle body, which, since we are talking about samashti over here, we're talking about the universal aspect, the macrocosm, that Antaratma becomes what? Remember, we said survey, everything. So that subtle body of everything. What is the name for that?
Hiranyagarbha.
Hiranyagarbha. Okay, so in the first section of this second chapter, Brahman is being presented as what? As the creator, as Jagat Karana. And the details of all this creation are being given in these slokas. Here also is Ataha, from that Brahman only, Samudraha. And here Shankara goes into a little bit of detail. So I'll give it to you very briefly. All types of oceans. Okay, though the Puranas talk about 7 types of oceans. Not to be confused with the 7 seas. We are not talking about 7 names of the oceans. We're talking about 7 types of oceans. So they say the first type of ocean is saltwater ocean, right? Then that is called Lavana, saltwater ocean. Then Ikshu is sugar cane juice ocean. Don't ask me where it is found. Then Sura, an ocean of liquor only. Okay. Then Sarpi, an ocean made of ghee. Then Dhadi, ocean made of yogurt. Then Kshira, a milk ocean, which of course we are familiar with. Then Jala, pure water ocean. So he says all these oceans are also born from that Brahman only. Then he says Sarve Giriyascha. So Giri is a small hill, a small mountain, and the cha suffix and etc. indicates etc., which means from the smallest mountain to the biggest mountain. And Shankara gives an example. He says Himalayam. So Himalayam is, Alayam is the abode, the residence. Hima is what? What is the
Snow.
snow? So Hima Alayam, abode of the snow. So Himalaya, he gives an example of the biggest type of mountain. Then he says Asmat Syandante, from him alone, Sarvarupaha Sindavaha Sandyante. All the rivers flow from Brahman alone. And Atascha Sarvaha Oshadayor Rasascha, out of this Brahman alone emerge all kinds of plants and herbs. Vrihi is given as an example, rice. Not only that, Rasaha, all the nutrients required, which are extracted from the plants, from the herbs, and are required for the maintenance of a body, they also come from there only. And Shankara says, Rasaha must be interpreted as Madhuradihi Shadvidaha, the 6 tastes, beginning with Madhu. Anybody knows? Slight background of, Ayurveda would know, but it was also there in Bhagavad Gita, in one of the chapters. What are the tastes? Madhu, sweet, then it's all there. Lavanam,
Is it that verse Katvam Lalavanat Yushna?
very much. So there you have Madhuhu, Lavanam, Amla, Pikta, Katuhu, Shayaha. So Lavanam is salty, Madhuhu is sweet, Amla is sour, Pikta is bitter, Katuhu is pungent, and Kshaya is astringent, drying up the mouth. We saw similar classification, but for Ahara. That was in BG 17.09. So this nourishment alone becomes the food for all living beings. And very importantly, yena. Because of this alone, why? What is this? This rasaha alone. Why does he concentrate upon the term rasaha? Because of this taste, these juices alone. It's not the food which is keeping you alive. It is the extract from that food, the nutrition obtained from that food, that is keeping the body alive. Therefore, he says, yena, you have to understand as yena rasena. From this nutrition alone, because of this alone, antaratma bhutaihi tishtati. This antaratma here, he says, it means sukshma sharira. This is very clearly because of nutrition alone, that sukshma shariram is remaining in the panchabhuta, which means sthula shariram. So bhutaihi panchabhihi sthulaihi. Because that nutrition alone, the sukshma shariram resides in the sthula shariram. It is able to reside because of the nutrition. And therefore he says, therefore antaratma lingam. Antaratma is the indicator. Indicator of what? Of life in that body. And what is that? That antaratma is sukshma shariram. Because it is a sukshma shariram, which is the linga shariram also it is called. Why is it called linga shariram? Because it is because of that shariram only there is RC. Right? The reflected consciousness is manifest in the physical body only because subtle body is there. And that is why he says Sukshma Shariram can be called Atma. Because it is the subtle body which reflects the Atma by way of the reflected consciousness. Okay. So all these again are what? Born from that Purusha, that Brahman alone. So you see, we have discussed Paramatma, we have discussed Jivatma, we have discussed Jagat also. What is the aim of the mantra? You have to negate two of these and retain only the Advaita. And Shankara, in support of his interpretation, he says, he quotes from Chandogya Upanishad. Ato vacharambhanam vikaro namadheyam. Every product, so vikaraha is a karyam, a product. Every product is where? Vacha arambhanam. It is only there on your tongue. And what is it? Namadheyam. It's only a name. And therefore, it is anritam. It is not the satyam. It is mithya only. So it's a very often quoted, Shruti Vakyam. Vacharambanam vikaro namadheyam. You will find it again and again coming. And Shankara is very fond of quoting because that particular Vakyam, that particular Shruti statement, it indicates that there is no real existence to any product because it exists only on your tongue. So the entire world, he says, exists only on your tongue. The pot exists on your tongue because the clay alone is Satyam. The pot is not Satyam. And deriving from here, he says, Ityeva Purusha Satyam. In the same way, Purusha alone is Satyam. The entire Jagat and all its beings, they are Mithya alone. So with this, we'll stop. And you can stop for any ask questions. You're welcome. The entire focus of this chapter has been the world doesn't exist independent of Brahman. And when you say world, it's really speaking, it's only a word. And that word is where? On your tongue. With that, he's about to wind up over here. In the next verse, of course, he'll do a more elaborate listing. Okay.
I had one doubt again, Raviji.
Yes.
In that verse, in that verse 217,
Yeah.
point 7. You mentioned two types of karmas under tapasya. One was called anga karma as part of the Vedic rituals.
Yeah. And
then
one was
what was the
Swatantra
second
Karma.
one? I missed.
Swatantra Karma, independent. Anga Karma, Karmanga is
Meaning,
a part of a Vedic ritual. The ritual itself is Swatantra, independent ritual. So you have any,
just like worldly
any ritual,
actions.
just like,
Like worldly actions or specifically spiritual?
no. If a ritual is let us say, to be followed by some discipline, right? For example, when we sit at the homam, you are supposed to wear a particular type of cloth, right? So particular type of dress you're supposed to wear when you sit for the home. So that homam is the main ritual, but the wearing of that particular dress or not wearing of chappals, all these things are, or having a bath in the morning before you come for the ritual, these are all the karma anga, those individual activities which are part of that homam. So they, independent of the homam, they will give you no punyam at all. It is a homam which makes the whole thing sacred. So my having a bath in the morning by itself has no meaning. But if I'm doing it for ritual, then the combined effect of all that gives punyam. And not having that bath,
And the Swatantra karma,
the karma is the ritual, the main ritual. For example, in the ashram,
that is the ritual.
we have this Tuesday ritual. The first day is puja, right? Monday evening puja. That is the main homam. That is the Swatantra karma, independent homam. That is the one which gives the punyam. But if you come for that without a bath, for you that punyam will not be available because you have violated the rules. But if you have a bath and don't go to the ritual, then again you will get no punyam. So having a bath, following the rules and coming to the ritual, that ensures the punyam. So the having a bath is karma.
Can we say that these are...
Yes, please, go
Yeah.
ahead.
Okay, can we say that these karma angas, even if you don't attend the Swatantra karma, they still will give you some sort of chitta shuddhi or some kind of benefit?
If they are done
like
independently.
fasting and bathing.
Yes. If they're done independently, yes. But not if they are done as part of the karma. Like you might have a ritual where fasting is part of the ritual, let us say. So fasting, if taken independently, like we have Ekadashi fasting. Okay, if that Ekadashi fasting is done independently without being part of a ritual, that will definitely give you Chitta Shuddhi because there is a sankalpa, there is a motivation for doing that. There is an intention of that fasting that yes, I am doing it for the Lord. So that will give you the punyam.
Right.
But if that fasting is supposed to be part of a ritual and you have not done the fasting, then that ritual itself will not give you the punyam because you violated the rules.
Okay. Sure. Thank you.
Okay. So with this, we'll stop here. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnam Eva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat. Om Namah Shivaya. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you.
Om Namah Shivaya. Thank you.